and welcome to the training video for the AeroClave RDS 3110 Portable Decontamination System. Before we discuss the operation of the system, let's first review all the components that make up the RDS 3110. The first component is the control panel that is located on the underside of the lid. The control panel is used to toggle through the different decontamination modes as well as adjust the time of the decontamination cycle. Upon closer inspection, you can see that there are 4 labeled buttons on the control panel. The mode button cycles through each of the 7 decontamination modes. The start button initiates the decontamination cycle and can also be used to shut off a decontamination cycle, and the up and the down buttons that can be used to increase or decrease the injection time. There are 7 decontamination modes on the RDS 3110 system, 6 fogging modes, and 1 hand spray mode. We will discuss these modes in greater detail shortly. You will notice some additional buttons to the right of the control panel screen. Disregard these buttons as they are non-functioning. However, they can be used by AeroClave personnel for programming and diagnostic purposes in the field. To the immediate right of the control panel is a red arming switch. This switch must be engaged prior to inputting the time or any decontamination operation. To the left of the control panel is the injection time chart. Using the cubic volume of the treatment area, reference this chart to see how much time needs to be input into the system. You will notice under the injection time heading that there are 3 columns: 1 fixed or remote for 1 spray nozzle, 2 fixed heads for 2 spray nozzles, 2 fixed and remote for 3 spray nozzles. Keep in mind that these times are for the injection phase only and do not reflect the total decontamination cycle time. Next is the 1-gallon removable disinfectant reservoir. This reservoir is used to store the disinfectant that is used for the decontamination cycle. To fill it, simply remove the reservoir from the RDS 3110 system, unscrew the cap, pour the disinfectant in, and replace the cap. When you replace the reservoir into the RDS 3110 system, be sure to push the quick connect fitting completely flush up against the top of the cap. You will notice that the lid of the RDS 3110 will not completely close while the reservoir is in the system. Please be sure to remove the reservoir prior to transport or storage of the RDS 3110 unit. Next are the 2 LED indicator lights on the front corners of the unit. These lights serve as a visual warning to let the operator know that the unit is still in some phase of the decontamination cycle. Next are the 2 fixed heads located on top of the unit. These heads are used to dispense the decontamination fog in the treatment area. Depending on the scenario, these heads can be used together or separately. If you are using 1 fixed head, take note that the head on the right will be active. A decontamination cycle can be initiated in 2 ways. Previously, we discussed the start button located on the control panel, but you can also initiate a decontamination cycle by pressing the button on the included remote control. And like the start button that is on the control panel, you can also use the button on the remote control to shut off a decontamination cycle. Next is the smart port that is located on top of the unit behind the fixed spray heads. This port is used to connect one of 2 accessories, either the AeroClave portable applicator or one of the many ADP ambulance ports. All AeroClave accessories use the same universal connector, and line it up with the white dot that is located on the smart port. Once you have done that, twist the connector clockwise to secure it into place. To disconnect the connector, simply turn it counterclockwise. The last component of the RDS 3110 is the AeroClave Portable Applicator, or APA. The APA is a 25-foot long dual-purpose accessory that can be used to manually apply disinfectant on desired surfaces or as a standalone fogging head similar to the two fixed heads located on top of the unit. Now that we have identified and discussed the individual components of the RDS 3110 system, we can review the basics of the decontamination process as well as the operation of the RDS 3110 system. The typical AeroClave decontamination cycle is comprised of 4 phases: the setup, injection, dwell, and aeration. You may have remembered that previously we mentioned that there were 6 different decontamination fogging modes. The following steps that we're going to review apply to all 6 fogging modes, irregardless of scenario or location. The first phase of the decontamination cycle is the setup. During the setup, the treatment area is prepped and secured in anticipation of beginning a decontamination cycle. As you can see on the steps listed below, some of the steps associated with setup are pre-cleaning the area, prepping the surfaces in the treatment area to be contacted by the decontamination fog, shutting off or isolating any HVAC exhaust or ventilation, and ensuring that all food, drinks, and personnel have been removed from the area prior to initiation of the decontamination cycle. After the treatment area has been prepped and secured, you can begin setting up the RDS 3110 system. Depending on the type of scenario that you're operating in, you want to determine the best location to place the RDS 3110 unit. When we discuss specific decontamination modes, we will go into greater detail as to where these desired locations are. Once you've determined this location, plug the unit into power, attach any appropriate accessories that you may be using, either an ADP port or an APA, select the appropriate mode for decontamination, flip up the red arming switch to engage that mode, then, using the time chart on the RDS 3110, determine how long you need to input for the system to run for. Once the treatment area is set up and prepped to your satisfaction, you may now initiate a decontamination cycle by either pressing the start button on the controller or by using the button on the remote control. When you push the start or the button on the remote control, the indicator lights on the front of the unit will begin to flash and will do so for 5 seconds until the unit begins to dispense the disinfectant. The unit will dispense the disinfectant for the length of time that was input during the setup. If necessary, at any time during the injection, the unit can be shut off by either pressing the start button on the controller or by pushing the button on the remote control. Once the injection phase has elapsed, the unit will cease dispensing disinfectant and move into a dwell period. The dwell period is actually the most important part of the decontamination process, as this period gives the disinfectant an opportunity to make ample contact with every exposed surface in the treatment area. This dwell period, regardless of scenario or location, will always last for a minimum of 10 minutes. As an added convenience, the LED indicator lights on the front of the unit will continue to flash for this 10-minute period. The final phase of the decontamination cycle is the aeration phase. Once the 10-minute dwell period has completed and the indicator lights on the front of the unit have gone dark, you can now start recovering the treatment area to get it back to its normal state. You can do that by opening doors or windows, activating HVAC exhaust or ventilation, or any other steps to bring fresh air back into the space. Upon opening the doors after the dwell period, you may notice that there is a slight fog or haze in the air. Allow this fog or haze to clear before re-entering the treatment area. Once the fog or haze has cleared, enter the treatment area, unplug the RDS 3110 from power, and remove from the treatment area. Now that we have gone over the basics of the RDS 3110, as well as the decontamination cycle process, let's look at some examples of the more common ways that the unit can be deployed. First, let's take a look at how to decontaminate an ambulance patient compartment without using an AeroClave ADP port. Along with the normal steps for setup of a decontamination cycle, there are a few extra steps to remember when decontaminating an ambulance patient compartment without an AeroClave ADP port. First is the mode that you want to operate in. Typically, this is done in a 2 fixed head mode. You want to place the RDS 3110 unit in either the very front or the very rear of the patient compartment, making sure that the single fixed nozzle is pointing towards the center of the patient compartment. When placing the unit, you want to ensure that you're in close proximity to power. You also want to make sure that there is a clear path for the disinfectant to dispense from the nozzle without spraying directly up against any surfaces, equipment, or furniture. Once the unit is placed and plugged into power, flip up the red arming switch and hit the mode button until you reach 2 fixed head mode. Once in 2 fixed head mode, determine the size of the space that you're decontaminating and use the injection time chart to determine the amount of time that you need to input into the system. For added convenience, the RDS 3110 is pre-defaulted to 6 minutes. 6 minutes is the standard runtime for a standard size ambulance patient compartment. Once you are satisfied that setup is complete, hit the start button on either the control panel or the remote control, close the ambulance doors, and allow the machine to initiate the decontamination cycle process. After the injection and dwell phases have completed, open up the ambulance doors to begin aeration. Keep in mind, there may be some fog or haze still present in the treatment area. Allow this fog or haze to dissipate before re-entering the space and removing the equipment. 3110 is also a fantastic tool to practice enhanced decontamination even within your facilities. Next, we will discuss some of the steps to setting up a decontamination cycle within a building. On screen are some notes to remember when decontaminating a room or a building. Keep in mind that the prep steps for the treatment area are identical to those for the back of an ambulance patient compartment. There are, however, some variables. For example, there are several modes that you can choose from when decontaminating a room or a building. The most common mode is 2 fixed head mode and will be the mode that we'll be using as our example. When placing the unit, you want to place it in as close to the center of the treatment area as possible. That way you are generating the decontamination fog from the center of the room. The injection time will vary. Use the included time chart, cross-referencing with the cubic volume of the room to determine how long the system will inject for. Once you are satisfied with the prep and the setup of the treatment area, place the unit in the center of the room, engage 2 fixed head mode, and hit the start button to initiate the decontamination cycle. Finally, let's discuss the steps for decontamination of surfaces using the AeroClave Portable Applicator, or APA. The APA is ideal for spot treatment on interiors, individual pieces of equipment, and the exteriors of buildings and vehicles. On screen are some notes to remember while using the APA. The mode that you will be using is hand applicator mode. Place the unit wherever is most convenient for the operator, ensuring that you are close to power to plug the unit in. There is no set injection time because the injection time is dependent on how much surface area needs to be decontaminated. There is one unique variable to the prep and setup of the treatment area when using the APA. Previously, when doing the decontamination fog, it was instructed that you isolate and turn off all HVAC, exhaust, or ventilation. When using the APA, it is stressed that you leave these systems on to ensure a comfortable operating environment for the user. Proper technique is important when using the APA. On screen are some additional notes to remember when using the APA. Use a slow spray painting motion when applying the disinfectant. We use the term spray painting because typically when spray painting you are applying paint directly onto the surfaces, as opposed to a house air freshener that you may waft through the air. When applying the disinfectant, you want to place it directly onto the surface. Keep the tip of the APA nozzle approximately 32 to 36 inches away from the surface. This will ensure even coverage and minimize any possible wetting. When the tip of the APA nozzle is kept at this distance, you will notice that the spray pattern cone will be about the size of a basketball. Avoid excessive wetting of surfaces, especially when applying this to electronics. If you experience any excessive wetting, you can remove the disinfectant by using a towel or a mop. Thank you for watching the AeroClave RDS 3110 decontamination training video. If you have any further questions or issues post-training, feel free to reach out to us toll-free at 1-800-788-9119 via email at info@aeroclave.com or visit our website at www.aeroclave.com.